Good, sir.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. My name is Sean Anderson. I'm actually the sales manager for Ortal Fireplaces for the Western United States. So basically everything from Texas West. So I guess a pretty big region and I get on the road quite a bit. In fact, I just did this week here, I was in San Antonio, Austin, and Dallas, which is a great area for me to visit. And the people of that area I really enjoy hanging out with and helping them with their fireplaces and getting them up and going. I live in Northern California. I live in between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe area. So I'm kind of drawn to the mountains individually. And so I like going up the hill and skiing and hiking and, just sitting around and drinking a cold beverage and enjoying nature. So that's a little bit about me. When Jason asked me to kind of present and talk to you, I didn't know exactly what to present. So I'm bringing you basically my AIA HSW presentation, which is designed for architects and designers to help them get their credits, but also teach them about direct vent gas fireplaces. So as I kind of jump in, I'll breeze through some of this stuff just because it's the least interesting part of the presentation. But this does actually apply for credits. If anyone's looking for credits, we can get you a certificate and get you 1 credit towards your continued education. And we're going to mainly talk about, for the most part, the contemporary direct vent gas fireplace market. We'll talk a lot about the safety requirements, some design features, various things when it comes to venting, a little bit about efficiencies and safety, but hopefully a good amount of information, and we can hopefully, if I didn't cover anything you were hoping I was going to cover, hopefully at the end you can ask questions and we can kind of make sure you guys are getting some value out of me being here today. Kind of touched on what we're kind of looking to do today a little bit with the learning objectives, and kind of why we consider this a health, safety, and welfare course. All of our products, just so you know, for the most part, are going to be UL approved because most of these gas fireplaces are actually gas appliances. So they run through several different groups. CSA International is being probably the most dominant one to get a UL code and a UL approval for these products. With the architects, I usually tend to jump in with kind of the evolution of the fireplace and kind of how we got to where we are today. Because way back when a long time ago, basically a fireplace was just an open chimney. It was an open section for cooking food and keeping heat inside, but it was a wood burning fireplace where the air for the fire was being pulled in from the home itself. And then a lot of that heat was actually going up the chimney and up the flue. It wasn't very efficient, but it's what we had at the time. We ended up going to the first kind of generation where it was a zero clearance manufacturer wood burning fireplace. And we also did some gas logs in this type of unit. It was less expensive. It was a lot easier to install. You could do wood framing around it. You didn't have to build a whole chimney to make it work. It still wasn't very efficient though, because we're actually still pulling the warm air from inside the home to fuel the fire. So we were still kind of not really hitting very good efficiencies, and a lot of the heat was still going up and out of the home. We started going into to B-vent manufactured gas fireplaces, and these were kind of a little bit more of a sealed system with a couple of different vents coming off of it. It was at this point now we're getting into that category where it's actually considered a decorative appliance. A lot of times we're still using room air for combustion in this case. So again, the efficiencies weren't still quite there. Then finally we got to a direct vent gas fireplace. And the efficiencies got a lot better because now we're pulling air from outside the home with the same pipe that we're using to send the smoke and the carbon monoxide and all the things we don't want in the home out. There we're getting much more efficient. We're not pulling heat from inside the house. And it was very convenient and easy to use. A lot of these work right off a wall switch. To now where it's now a key focal point of design. Fireplaces and fire features are becoming much and much more part of the design and appeal, and designers are doing more and more with these units and really doing some really creative things, because we were able to do some things over the last 10 years or so on our heat management of the wall. We'll get into that in a minute. But we were able to do more, which just opened up the floodgates when it came to design and how we were doing fireplaces. So a direct vent fireplace, styles. There's lots of different things you can do. You can make it look like a traditional fireplace with brick panels and still running off gas, but we're actually making it look deep like a traditional fireplace would look. Sometimes we're doing maybe something a little more transitional where it's got the mantle, but it's still a little bit more linear in design, to a much more contemporary style where we're getting more linear in different sizes and styles to really kind of make it much more, obviously this picture from San Francisco, which is a very contemporary environment, a much more contemporary look and design to kind of meet the design of what someone's looking at. And these front faces are considered front facing fireplaces, come in different heights and widths to kind of meet the design appeal, or in most cases matching the size of a TV, to kind of fit in with the design. We also can open these up as a corner unit. This is actually a left corner unit where it's kind of open, the fire's open on two sides of the fireplace. Or we can even do three sides and do what's called either a three-sided or a bay style unit, or even a peninsula, or what they consider a space creator, where it's actually kind of coming out into the room with its design feature. Tunnels or see-throughs are also becoming more and more popular, where you can actually go from one room to another in different sizes and styles. Or you can even do this type of tunnel system from inside the house to outside the house. And this one's actually, the heat is still being produced inside, so it's still an efficient system where the heat is actually inside, and the outside is actually an R-rated window that actually seals up, and you can do cannonballs inside your pool, or you could be in cold environments and still work efficiently, excuse me. And then there's even others that are island units or hanging on the wall, what we consider standalone type units, as you kind of go through these styles of these fireplaces that are available on the market. The big thing that the direct vent gives us, it really kind of frees up where we can put the fireplace in the home. It doesn't need an external wall. It doesn't have to be on an external wall. It could be out in the middle of the home. As long as you can get that direct vent pipe to that unit, it gives you a lot more freedom on where you're placing your fire feature. Like I said, the same pipe both fuels the fire with natural gas, because the firebox itself is actually sealed, and all the smoke is going up the middle pipe, and at the same time it's drawing in air to combust for the combustion of the fire with the outer pipe. So it's a coaxial pipe that kind of makes this possible and allows us to kind of make sure that we don't have any carbon monoxide in the building. We have a balanced flue system, meaning we don't have to, I don't know if you were like me when I was burning a fireplace when I was a kid, we had to crack one window to get a nice draw on our fireplace. You don't have to worry about that anymore, because that's actually doing it itself. The negative air has no effect on the fireplace itself. It's providing a much more efficient heat source, because again, we're now in a lot of these units that are on a natural draw and not power vented and pulling a lot of the heat out of the house, are actually keeping sometimes as much as 70 to 80% efficiencies to keep the heat inside. And they vary in kind of how much gas they use and the amount of BTUs, but a lot of these newer ones are actually lower BTUs, so it's not really even using as much gas as, say, a log burner would be using. Now, when they first came out with these direct vent fireplaces, they were very easy to install. They had a lot of ways to vent the fireplaces you see here, up and out, or straight up, or right out the back. This was basically a firebox inside another metal box. And there was a downfall that came from this. Basically, the heat would be coming off the fireplace right off the front and rolling up the front wall. So as a result, the heat on that wall was very drastic. We were hitting temperatures right above the glass of the fireplace up to almost close to 400 degrees on that wall, which really affects what you can do around the fireplace. You couldn't work with, we were having problems with sheetrock cracking, with, obviously you couldn't do, marble and nice tiles and things like that because they would crack. If you were trying to use any type of glue product or adhesive product up there, it would really dry out. And wood was, you couldn't put wood around these fireplaces. It would just dry up and become a hazard. So we developed a process called cool wall technology. And what this was a process to try to cool the temperature of that wall by not having that not having that heat roll up the wall, but instead rise up into a chase inside the wall and then release out at the top of the wall. And what this actually does is it actually creates a way to circulate the air in the room so that that front wall became drastically less hot. And again, still keep the heat inside the home to keep the efficiency ratings up.
Wow.
And we're able to all of a sudden do things.
Go back to that last one if you don't mind. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
What are the clearances? Move your cursor to the top of the firebox there. What are the clearances for your units and the combustible material there? I've never heard of a cool wall.
So in this scenario, and I'm going to speak mainly from Ortal standpoint because that's the company I work for. The inside of this chase here can be all wood framing. The only metal framing requirement would be above the glass, the first 18 inches above the glass, but all this could be wood framing through here. The heat release needs to be within 6 inches of the top of this chase area. So if you wanted your heat release lower down in here, you can put in a fire stop here and still have your heat release lower. All this can be wood. This can be a wood ceiling and it won't affect it because there's so much air circulating through, and by circulating through so much and keeping this air flowing, the heat temperatures by the time they get up here have been reduced, and the temperature of the wall right here is actually the same temperature as the room itself.
Huh. Was that all driven by product being able, was any of that driven by code, or was most of that driven by need in the marketplace?
Most of that was driven by design need. You know, people wanted to put televisions above their fireplace without a mantle. People wanted to use wood finishes. They wanted to use marble and tile and limestone and all these things that just would not work with a conventional direct vent fireplace.
Pretty cool. Thanks.
No, you bet. Thank you. Great question. But like I said, it opened it up and allowed us to do things that we weren't able to do in the past. Like I said, that heat release just need to be as part of this system. If you don't heat release it, then you are using a large power vent system and sucking all the heat out of the house, and all the efficiencies go away. But those products are available if somebody doesn't want the heat. Those products are available on the market. You know, you can use louvers, you can use the heat releases. I'm finding that the shadow line at the ceiling is becoming the most popular option because it really kind of blends into a lot of styles and designs, as you see in these pictures. But you can also use a louver or a register or something that maybe looking to match with the rest of the home. And then if you have some type of shelf, you can release this right with a louver right straight off the top of the shelf and into the room.
Yeah, I can imagine seeing that one on the right out in the field and being like, hold on now, we can't have that material there. I'm going to need to see the manufacturer's installation instructions for that.
Yep. It's yeah, for a long time we're constantly making sure we're showing the home inspectors that this is an okay thing to do, because it was a drastic change. It really was.
Yeah. Yeah. And Stephen asked, that meets all the 2018 mechanical code. You have zero issue with even the 2021 codes, I'm assuming?
Correct. It's all, it's already pre-approved, UL listed, because again, it's a gas appliance.
Yeah.
As opposed to
the UL listing requirement in the mechanical code is being met, and you are code compliant.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Thank you.
We'll talk about safety barriers here in a little bit, but sometimes you do need air to move between, let's say, two pieces of glass on the front. So a lot of times you will have a requirement to get air in, just like the heat release, to keep it flowing. When you're using these screened units, you don't need this because it's a layer of glass and then a screen to protect you. And we'll go into more of that later, but you're probably seeing some of these where they have a louver down low, and this kind of helps circulate the air through depending on the safety barrier that you might be using. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit as well. Hey, right, I guess I was, when I say a little bit, I mean right now. Safety barriers came out about 7 years ago now, 2015, 2016. And it came about from unfortunately, when we were doing these fireplaces, that first layer of glass that seals up the box is a ceramic glass, and it gets extremely hot, to the point where if you went up and touched it, you're possibly going to stick to that fireplace and leave a layer of skin on that fireplace. So for children, for pets, and things like that, we did a self-imposed industry requirement to make sure that whatever you go up and touch has to be at least under 172 degrees. Again, that's still pretty warm, but it's not to the point where you're going to stick to it and burn your hand just by touching it. So there's a couple ways you can do this. Most of the industry went to some type of screened unit like you see here. So it's a protection between that inner glass and a screen. They were kind of bulky. They weren't very pretty. People weren't really liking them. So then we started developing more of a micro mesh screen like you see here. And these are pretty nice because it'll take a lot of the glare off that glass as well. So in a way, it kind of allows you to see the flame better during the daylight hours, especially if you have lots of windows in the room. And honestly, there's so much air moving through that screen because air is coming through the screen and then rising up into that chase above, that after this unit's been burning all day, I'll go up and put my face on our unit that has a screen unit on it, and it won't bother me at all. There's so much air moving through it. It stays very cool and is very safe. Some manufacturers like Ortal here use a system where they stretch the screen around a corner piece of glass so that you won't have a post out here on the corner to kind of have that really kind of open feel, which I believe is a really neat design, and still have that screen installation. The other type of safety system would be what's called a double glass screen barrier. It's definitely much more of a contemporary, cleaner look. You kind of get a nice seamless look because the glass comes together at corner units. The outer glass is actually in most cases a tempered glass for additional kind of safety if something fell into it, so there wouldn't be shards of glass. And again, this unit, this type of system will stay under 172 degrees. And in most cases, it's much less than that. But it's not cool to the touch. A lot of times people hear cool wall and they think the glass is going to be cool to touch. And that's not necessarily the case. It'll still be warm because we got fire behind glass. And with these systems, we do need to move the air between those two pieces of glass, because if the air just sits there, it's going to make an insulator and basically just heat up that outer piece of glass just as much. But so by moving the air in between, it allows that outer glass to remain cool. And like I said, then you get that really nice, clean corner look that people really like when it comes to contemporary design. Venting options. So when it comes to venting these units, there's lots of flexibility in how you vent them. They can usually have a few elbows. They can go straight up. They can terminate horizontally or vertically, and gives you a lot of kind of ways to make sure you get the venting done in a way. Now,
in code language, what type of vent is required?
So there's several different vent manufacturers out there, but this is a direct vent, not a B vent. It's a direct vent, so it's a coaxial pipe. Brands like Duravent and ICC, and those are out there that provide that type of vent, but it is a metal vent. It's not an insulated vent. And so there's going to be clearances when it comes to the venting. Usually the industry standard is when your clearances from the vent pipe itself is going to be 1 inch to the side, and usually 3 inches when anytime you're have a horizontal run to any material.
But in reality, the outer metal of that vent never really gets warm. Right.
It's warm to the touch, but not to the point where it would burn you, because that's the outer pipe has the fresh air coming in from outside to fuel the fire. The hottest air is on the inside pipe. And by the time you get up,
I've had one raging, and you can touch it and it's just barely warm.
Yeah. And it depends on the vent run too. If it has a lot of elbows and things like that, it's not power vented. It'll get warmer in spots than others. But yeah, you're correct. For the most part, you can touch that outer pipe. And they want that airflow around the pipe is usually more for, as opposed to worrying about combustibles and things like that, it's more to keep the airflow around the pipe to keep it cooling. Now, when you exceed the limits of that direct draw vent pipe, you can add in power vents, which allow more flexibility. It allows you to, when you're using a natural draw vent, you need an initial rise to get that draw going. You can't really turn 90 degrees right off the top like this vent run does here. So you can use a power vent, which is usually is in line, part of the vent, or possibly at the end of the vent run at the end. This is actually a horizontal flush mounted power vent, which allows you to go down. It actually usually drops the size of the vent pipe itself. So it could be a smaller diameter pipe and fit through smaller sections. This works great in scenarios where you want kind of an open scenario above the glass like that, where you don't want to see any pipe. Or if you're in a commercial environment where you have a longer run and you really need to get to a certain spot. A lot of cities, have places where you can exhaust and you can't. So by having this power vent system, it gives you more flexibility to still get that unit where you want to get it. Allows you to do some different things that you can't do with a natural draw pipe. Now, access. So this is a demonstration of some of the things you'll see underneath the fireplace. There's going to be a valve. There's going to be an electrical outlet. There's going to be a receiver. Having access to these items will save your customers a lot of heartache in the future, because it allows you to get to what you need to get to if you ever have an issue with the fireplace. So having an access hidden away in a fake drawer or a fake cutout like you see here is going to save a lot of time. A lot of these controls you can access through the fireplace, but that means removing the glass, possibly 2 layers of glass, removing all the media from inside the fireplace, removing the burner, and going in down through the bottom of the fireplace. So, a quick little service call that might last 30 minutes with an access panel might last 4 or 5 hours, having access through the fireplace itself.
And code would require access to the valve anyway.
Correct.
Right?
So, and it's going to be code. Correct. That's correct. And that's something that all the local codes are always going to come into play. You might have a key valve requirement. Let's see if I had one here, but you might have
on that picture, I'll put it back on the CSST picture. Just FYI, I covered this yesterday in the webinar. If there's a shutoff valve in a CSST gas piping system like that, it now has to be secured in the 2018 code. So that would have to be rigidly secured. And then we talked about some additional bonding requirements that came in the 2018 about CSST as well yesterday. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
No, those are great points, because honestly, as a manufacturer, we say it's not required to have an access panel because you can't access these things. But then we highly advise you have one and check with local codes and your local dealer who would be selling you the fireplace to make sure that those local codes are met. Because that's a great point. It's going to be different in Nevada it is in Texas as it is in Montana. So you're going to have your local requirements. Like I said, the framing around it, you can use metal framing around these boxes, or you can use wood. Metal framing is becoming more and more popular. There's usually going to be a requirement of some type of metal framing right above the glass portion of the firebox. You can't just go straight to wood. This one's getting ready for a TV that's going to be placed here. So they put a type of X on the inside as well to give them a place to run their wiring. Just kind of a couple of the different options. And usually as you're kind of building these out, I'm seeing more and more metal framing just because it's becoming much more popular when it comes to fireplace work. And some dealers will do this work for you. Some it's back on the contractor.
Yeah, we're not seeing that yet in Texas.
Not as much. Okay.
Very, very little of it. No.
Well, a little side story. Technically, Ortal fireplaces are actually constructed and engineered in Israel. Is where we've been. The company started 30 years ago, and they don't have wood studs in Israel. Everything's built out of concrete, and so it took a long time for us to explain to them what we needed as required as safety features and our guidelines and our manuals to make sure that they understood what we were using as construction materials in the U.S.
But you could use masonry, structural masonry for all that as well.
Absolutely.
Assuming, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
We used to have a requirement that you have to have Type X inside the chase. That is no longer the case. So some manufacturers might still have that. So it's something to watch out for. It's sometimes required when you're using wood framing to have that Type X inside the chase. But with Ortal as an example, it is not. But at the same time, when you're doing a TV, it's sometimes a nice thing to have, like I said, to run your wires, give you that extra layer of insulation. This is kind of some things that we kind of show when it comes to, designing your TV. Again, it seems to be the most popular thing out there is to have a fireplace and a TV together, and making sure that you have your airflow through the air for that cool wall system section coming through here. So it can be easily be blocked with a stud that's laid across that opening as opposed to laying it flat like that. A lot of manufacturers will give you an option to 45 off the top of the box to offset your pipe a little bit to get away from a recessed TV like this here. And there's lots of ways you could do it. You can recess the firebox and the TV like you do here. You could do flush mount or flush mount the TV. Some fireplace manufacturers will require you have that TV on the same plane as the firebox or not on the same plane as the firebox. With Ortal, you can kind of go any combination you want.
Yeah, the lesson there is for all the inspectors on the webinar today is make sure and have a copy of the manufacturer's installation instructions when you're doing your framing inspection, because it's all across the board what the manufacturers require.
But like I said, it's a lot of the concepts, especially the one on the right, is probably one of the most popular designs I'm seeing is a recessed television and a slightly recessed firebox. You can do shelves and things like that above these. It's okay. Sometimes there's going to be a requirement if you have a larger shelf. Some design aspects here. You have a larger shelf here. The heat release that we were talking about, which would be up at the ceiling most of the time. This shelf is so much that you would need a little bit of heat release off this shelf as well. And the manufacturer's manual should say, depending on the square footage of this shelf versus the size of the firebox, whether you need possibly 25% of your heat release on the shelf itself. Whereas the one on the right, this would all be there. Terminations for the fireboxes. When we're coming out a roof, there might be some requirements on the clearances and also how high you have to come out of the roof based on the pitch of the roof. A lot of times if you have multiple terminations, the same location, you can get them closer together by offsetting the height of them like you see on the right. So there is going to be some requirements because we don't want to be pulling in bad air from one appliance to the other. So to have the clearances in regards to that. And then just kind of the industry standards when it comes to your horizontal terminations, how close they can be to a window, how, they can be usually under a balcony or a deck, as long as it has a certain amount of clearances, sometimes to a doorway, to a corner, like you see in the upper right-hand corner here, right up in there. That's kind of a little bit of information that you'll see in most fireplace manuals. This actual diagram will be in there because it's kind of an industry standard. Finished materials, like I said, you can do things with wood and stone and concrete and metal that you used to not be able to do. It really does give a lot of freedom now, the things you can do. Lots of metal kits. Companies out there like Stoll do these wall units that are designed to go around fireplaces. And then when it comes inside the firebox, anytime when we talk about the things we're putting inside the firebox, we're calling it media. So obviously, if you see somebody putting rocks from the river inside their fireplace, please stop them. Rocks from the river will explode because there's water inside those rocks. But most direct vent fireplace manufacturers have lots of options, whether it's glass in different colors these days, stones and cannonballs. To kind of mix and match.
I would encourage them to keep putting them in there and just sit back and crack open a cold beverage and watch.
Yeah. There's lots of things you can do with these fireplaces, which is really nice. It really gives you kind of a lot of features going on. And that really kind of concludes the official portion of the AIA presentation. I probably said Ortal too many times during that. They like me to not make it a sales pitch when I'm doing it. The nice thing about Ortal is you can always reach out directly to us and ask questions. You can always reach out directly to me. And I think at the end, I just kind of put some more slides together to just kind of inspire
That's a nice view right there. That San Francisco view. Wow.
Isn't that pretty? Yeah.
Really
good spot. These collapsible window things where they just kind of open up the rooms, or now you can only have this thing open, during the month of October. The rest of the year, it's too cold there. But
Yeah, in Texas, you can use that 6 months out of the year. It's going to be 76 tomorrow here. So that's
yeah,
actually, I'm in San Antonio, so you were just right in my neck of the woods. And yes,
yeah.
after the presentation, I will, if I think I already have a PDF copy of your slides from the AEC Daily presentation that I found. I just had one of the attendees ask for a copy of the slides. Do you want to send me a PDF of these instead, or do you want me to just use the ones from the AEC Daily course?
Yeah, either that or a lot of these pictures are on our website. We have a gallery on our website at ortalheat.com. It's a great place for information. All the manuals you'll ever need are at that location.
I'll send everybody a PDF of the slides I already have, and so you'll at least have something. That's all. Do y'all manufacture any rustic looking designs, or is it all the more contemporary? I guess it depends on the media you're using and the size and everything else.
A lot of it, the wood media. We have a new line called Wilderness where we actually are bringing the gas flame out the log itself, so it looks like the log is burning. That's not it. That's our traditional there. Traditional. Let me see if I have the Wilderness in here. I think I do. Lots of different styles and designs here. We can even put them together as a modular system. Oh yeah, here's the Wilderness here. So this is kind of the newest thing that we have going on, where the flame itself is coming out the log, so it gives it a much more traditional look, and still has low amounts of BTU, still has cool wall, and allows you to do different things. And this is a video of it here.
Yeah,
So the fire itself
looks
is actually coming out the log.
fairly real looking.
Yeah.
Or realer. That's pretty cool.
So that's kind of our newest system that has a lot more of a, I think a much more of a rustic look, and plus it gets the flame up higher without having to crank up the BTUs. And sorry, someone's trying to call me from the school right now.
No worries. No, if you need to take it real quick,
No,
I get a call
okay.
from the school. I understand.
It's all good. My wife's working from home as well. She'll grab it. So again, that's kind of more of our new rustic design that's becoming really popular in that Wilderness that you'll start seeing more often. And you can also start connecting these things with the Wi-Fi apps. The nice thing about these Wi-Fi apps, just from a safety feature, they have to be on the same Wi-Fi network. If you're using your phone to start your Firebox, you have to be at the same Wi-Fi network as the Fireplace itself. That'll keep people from turning on their Fireplaces while they're on vacation or at work or what might be.
Are there any? I don't recall seeing any code. The none of the codes, to your knowledge, have anything to say about that connectivity of the appliances, do they? I don't remember seeing anything in the code.
Not that I've seen.
Yeah, I don't think so.
This is kind of the Lyric line, which has a little bit more of a construction builder model. And there, if you really run into a roadblock or something like that, and you need something for more tall, that's me. That's the best way to get a hold of me.
Right on. Have you seen? And obviously, the best place to find code violations is from one manufacturer ratting out another one. Are you seeing that the vast majority of your competition, the vast majority of direct vent fireplaces meet as far as code compliance? Are you seeing any significant issues or any, hey, beware? I mean, I'm not asking you to call out the brand or anything, but hey, beware of some brands call for X, Y, or Z, or beware that some brands aren't allowed to be installed in this, or have you noticed anything along those lines?
No particular manufacturer, and to be honest with you, that most manufacturers do something in different ways, and all kind of have their own ideas. There's a few companies out there that make cheaper knockoffs, and those kind of concern me because they kind of reduce some of the welds and the quality of steel that they're using and things like that. There's a cheap knockoff version of Ortal out there that worries me a little bit, but at the same time, it's usually going to be something that was installed incorrectly, or probably wasn't the best product to use for that project. So they're wanting to do, heat and glow mezzo is a great fireplace, and you'll see it in a ton of homes. It's a great flame, but the wall will get very hot above the firebox, and I'll see people use some type of natural stone or wood right above that, and not use a hearth, or put a TV right above it, and they're gonna ruin and waste all their money because they're gonna have to rebuild that wall if they did something like that. But it's so not so much the manufacturer; it's just either the wrong product was used or was installed incorrectly. I see mine installed incorrectly quite often, and I have to go out and make sure they make the corrections for it to work properly.
Well, I didn't see any more questions come in. We have a few more minutes. I guess we can just let everybody finish a few minutes early today. A lot of times I keep people 10 or 15 minutes later than I'm supposed to for these webinars. So since it's Friday, we will just go ahead and cut it a little bit short today. No worries. Sean, a great presentation. Some really cool looking fireplaces. And again, I think for the inspectors on the line, the key takeaway there is you really need to read your manufacturer's installation instructions for those fireboxes. I know I've been on many of an inspection and something just didn't quite look right, and you just have to take the time to sit down and read. And I've often found myself shocked in the field that what looked like it didn't have enough clearance, actually by the manufacturer, there's some zero clearance stuff in there that you were just certain that it couldn't possibly be. So, but you can't have a zero clearance when you needed 3 inches at the same time. And there's just no way to know that whatsoever unless you read the manufacturer's installation instructions. I guess real quick, just because it's kind of fun, and it's been my COVID project that I've been building throughout this COVID issue here. I built a big fire pit in my backyard, and I actually installed a propane heater too, so I can get a little gas there. But here's I think this is it. Oh, hold on. I don't think I started sharing. Y'all, I don't think you're seeing.
Yeah, you're sharing.
Oh, I am? Okay. All right. The old weekly Cantina bar update. I know this is on a personal note, but hey, it's kind of fun. Built a little fire pit on the way. Around, doors on the inside. I'm gonna leave y'all intrigued on what's on the inside. We'll cover that some other time. That's been what I've been building in my backyard over. So anyway, thanks. Sorry to get off on a personal note. Thanks so much, Sean. That was fantastic. And if anybody has any further questions, just let me know. There's one more. Jim. No. That's not me. That's my wife. Appreciate you joining us, everyone. Thanks again, Sean. We'll call it a few minutes short today. Y'all have a great weekend.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Appreciate the time.
Thanks.